We're over halfway through the week and I think it's time we had a bit of rest and relaxation.
Well, funny you should say that, Nikki, because this is a working sauna here on this finished garden.
Oh, I like the sound of that. It feels like a Nordic shoreline right here.
Perfect. But one thing we need to do before we have our little mini break, isn't there?
Oh yeah, definitely. We have got a show to get started. Welcome to the RHS Chelsea Flower Show.
Hello and welcome to a much busier Chelsea than it's been all week.
Certainly is. Today is the day that after a 2-year wait, the general public are finally welcomed into the showground for their first look at all the gardens and the Great Pavilion.
And what a sight they have in store. It's looking incredible, isn't it?
Oh, it is stunning, fantastic. And personally, I've always loved the artisan gardens like this one right here, the Blue Diamond Forge. Now, the designer has been inspired, can you believe, by a 16th century working thatch forge in Devon. And what he created here is magnificent.
It's really, really good. And it's incredible to think that this wasn't here 3 weeks ago.
I know, mind-blowing. Now, earlier in the week, this garden scooped one of the most coveted prizes here at Chelsea, the RHS Best Artisan Award.
And there's the plaque, look, which well-deserved. Give them a round of applause.
Did a brilliant job. Right then, should we get started? Coming up today on the RHS Chelsea Flower Show, an event supported by M&G. Toby is back with his design masterclass for your garden. Today he's showing us how to use plants to create structure and definition.
James Wong gets botanical with our bathroom houseplants and shows us how to create our very own trendy terrarium.
And I'm joined by actor and comedian Rufus Hound to share in his newfound love of the good life and the joy of growing your own.
But first, earlier today I got the chance to look around another of the artisan gardens here at Chelsea and meet a very special guest. This is the Guide Dogs for the Blind 90th anniversary garden. It has a very different feel about it to all the other gardens I've seen. It's been designed by Adam Walcott and Jonathan Smith, but there's one very important lady who helped inspire them to create this garden. Welcome Janet Alder and her guide dog Nugget. Hello Janet.
Hello.
And hello Nugget.
Nice
Look
to
at
meet
him.
you.
Oh, hello. You must be so proud of this garden.
I am.
So tell me a bit about how you worked with the designers to create it.
Well, I was asked, what do I think a garden would be good for the blind? And I said, thinking first about when I had a little bit of sight, I said lots of blocks of colour, especially orange and yellow, because they're quite dominant colours that you can see easily when you can't see very well.
Yeah.
And then when I went blind, I thought of how I love to touch things and the smell of things. So that's the way I decided. I said I'd like water because you can hear the ripple of water and birds that sing.
So all those elements, and it's lovely that you've got a part of your life where you could remember colour, and it's now about sensory, because sensory is so vital, isn't it, for people who can't see?
Yes, I just love it, and it's remarkable really what different feels you get from different plants. There's the frondy plants. I just recently bought a tree, a Salix Golden Sunshine, and I bought it because it was so frondy, and they said plant a tree this year, so I did. And I like lots of leaves that are serrated. Some are sort of succulent, so they're sort of fatter to feel. And then there's the tamarisk, which is very feathery. It's just wonderful to feel all these different things.
And so do you like doing a lot of gardening now? Does Nugget help you? Hello.
Nugget comes and lays by me when I garden, yes.
Yeah, so you do spend some time outdoors, and is that?
Oh, yes. Every morning I go around the garden and feel everything, and then I know what I've got to do, because I do a little bit each day, whether it's cutting back or sitting on the side weeding.
Well, you're an inspiration, and I love this garden, and it's been wonderful to meet you.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Now, making the most of the space you have is always tough, whether you have a medal-winning garden like this one, a small spot in the pavilion, or like most of us at home, a simple balcony or backyard. So Rachel de Tame has been to meet one first-timer to Chelsea who is demonstrating that when space is at a premium, you can always go up.
Jamie and Hilton, there's no missing your display, is there? You can see it from across the pavilion. These wonderful shapes. I know, Jamie, that you've been at Chelsea before, haven't you? How's this experience been?
It's been just a huge privilege to be inside the floral marquee, the epicentre of horticultural excellence across the world, and to be alongside the good and the great of horticulture. It really is a pinch me moment just to be here, and to be alongside Hilton as well really is incredibly special. We're very grateful.
How's it feeling for you, Hilton? Is this come together as you imagined?
Yeah, very much so. It's being at Chelsea is just so exciting. I've been making these pots for 14 years, and it has always been a dream of mine to come to Chelsea. And then meeting Jamie and putting the plants together with these huge pots has just been fantastic.
I must say that, I mean, these pots have real scale to them.
They certainly do.
So how might that be interpreted for someone with a smaller garden? Because sometimes it's quite good to have something bold in a small space, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. We wanted to showcase form and structure. So whether you've got a huge estate and you want some huge topiary cones, or whether you've got a tiny balcony, I think it's still good to, rather than actually doing too much in one space, actually simplify it, having structural planting, plants that add form into the garden in a beautiful pot. Less is more sometimes, but size really does matter.
Right, so not being afraid to be bold in a small garden.
Absolutely.
What about all this underplanting here? Because beautiful grasses, and not often actually one sees grasses in pots.
Absolutely, and I think grasses add so much texture to planting, and we've never done a September show before, but nobody has. Yeah. So we were incredibly excited to showcase a range of plants that won't have ever been seen at Chelsea before, ever, and actually showcase things like miscanthus in flower at Chelsea, and showcase that actually you can simplify your palette and still have a beautiful garden.
Yep. Yeah, it's been a rare opportunity, hasn't it, to show that autumn beauty. So what do we think? Doing it again?
Definitely. Can't wait. Bigger and better.
Good. That's
a yes.
I'm really glad to hear it. And you know what? I can see the visitors really, responding to it as well.
They love the garden.
Many congratulations on this. I think you've achieved something very special and without a flower in sight.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
All this week, we've been following Toby Buckland's daily masterclass on the basics of garden design. In today's final instalment, it's all about the green bits. Oh yes, Toby is going to show you how to pick the right plant for the right place.
All this week, we've been looking at the building blocks of good garden design. There's the style, should it be formal or informal, and how to divide up your garden space. Today, it's the fun bit, the planting. The thing about planting design, though, is that it's more complex than hard landscape. And that's because the plants change with the season. So while you can have a formal planting design, over time the plants are going to grow and the whole look is going to become more loose or shabby. Now, I'm on our friend Arit's one-show Garden of Hope, and in it she's got this fabulous medlar tree. It's getting more beautiful by the hour as the fruits ripen. This is the perfect thing to put at the back of the border at the end of the garden. When it comes to plants of winter interest, this is a dogwood, or cornus, and it has bright red stems when all the leaves fall off in winter, and they really glow because the rest of the garden has gone to ground. So they want to be somewhere that you can enjoy them whatever the weather, perhaps in a front garden because you're going to walk past them every day, or out of the kitchen window so you see them when you're filling up the kettle. When it comes to summer colour, there's a place to put that too. And the name of the game is concentrating it where you are in summer, around your patio, in containers. I love the planting here. The colours are gorgeous. You've got carob-coloured dahlias next to rubrifolia roses. It's simple ideas like that, tying plants together with colour that make, well, borders pop. Remember, less so often is always more. I love the pop artist Liechtenstein, and I love this, the Pop Street Garden. The planting's so saturated and vibrant, and after the year or two we've had all cooped up, being back here at Chelsea, this is how I feel. And then you've got the plants that will be there for you 12 months of the year, the evergreens. And this is the hot tin roof garden. In every single one of these containers, there's an evergreen of one description or another. And if I get a perch, and this brings me on to the final planting design point, texture. Now, texture to garden designers is the way foliage looks like it feels. This Carex looks spiky, it feels soft. This box looks soft, but actually feels quite spiky. By combining spiky textured plants with those with a soft texture and plants with a large tropical lush look, you create a tapestry that will look good in your garden all year round. And all these things are simple, but planting design, like the best ideas, they often are.
Lots of great advice in there, and Toby will be joining us later in the show for our Chelsea Clinic. Well, that's your outdoor design sorted, but what about inside your home? Well, James Wong is the man for the job, and I never thought I'd say this at Chelsea, but I think you'll find him in the bathroom.
Now, I know the bathroom is probably not the first place you think about when it comes to your horticultural ambitions, but I promise you, it will open up the opportunities for the plants you can grow like no other space. Let's take a look. Now, the wonderful thing about bathrooms is they're incredibly humid places. The combination of hot running water and a small room size means that the air is completely saturated with moisture, just like it is in the densest tropical rainforests. And these are conditions that are almost impossible to replicate in any other room of the house. And that means you can uniquely grow things like these incredibly rare and amazing Hoopersias, some of the most unusual orchids, carnivorous plants that are literally impossible to grow anywhere else. They would start to collapse, they would start to get brown edges, but in a bathroom, they're at home. I absolutely love the green bathroom retreat, and it's because it has this combination of really high drama with big plant leaves, but also this kind of forensic level of detail. So the more you look, the more you see. And what I've spotted in the place are these incredible hydroponic gardens that are dotted throughout the place. They're almost like half horticulture, half floral display. And essentially what they are is plants that have just been taken out of their compost and grown in water. So you'll very often see things like this philodendron or maybe a monstera grown this way. But you can also grow things like spider plants, like begonias, sometimes even succulents grown this way, as long as the water is changed really frequently, about once a week. And to me, the most miraculous thing about having houseplants in the bathroom is because you can control the water levels in their individual parts. You can have species from the deserts of southern Africa right up against plants from the Colombian cloud forest. And all you have to do is water these ones less and the other ones more. And that means you can create these otherworldly landscapes that could never exist in nature, and you can view them as you wallow in your bathtub. It's the ultimate escapist retreat.
Oh, fascinating stuff. And James will be with us later on, showing us how we can all create our very own terrariums, which have become incredibly trendy in recent years. I'll certainly be after some tips, and that's not all we have for you. Still to come, Frances Tophill will be giving us her rundown of the best plants to buy that will give us year-round interest in our gardens. Chris Bavin is speaking to the designers and exhibitors in the Grey Pavilion to get all their gardening tips and tricks to make your life easier. And I've got a very special behind-the-scenes exclusive to bring you. Last night, I got the chance to see the Chelsea Flower Show as the crowds were leaving and the sun was setting. I can't wait to show you that. But before then, I've been joined by award-winning comedian and presenter turned actor, Rufus Hound. Rufus, welcome to Chelsea. Your first time, I believe.
I mean, what a delight to be here. I walked in expecting flowers a go-go, but I've already bought 300 pairs of luxury gardening gloves. And let me tell you, the deals they've got on secateurs, Nikki, you'd be mad not to snap them up.
It's all here.
Oh,
and
it's
you've
all
only
here.
just started.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to drag you away at the end of the day,
Oh, a
are
loose
we?
twill and yet waterproof. I mean, it's ideal everywhere.
It is such an amazing event, but you've come here in the name of research, haven't you?
Yeah.
You're actually going to be, I use the term loosely, working. So tell us about this new play.
Well, I think most people watching this coverage will be familiar with The Good Life.
Oh.
You know, it lives on in legend almost. It's because of things like UK Gold and whatever, it's weirdly kind of never been off TV. So what is it about this now nearly 50-year-old story that still resonates with people? You know, ultimately, a man gets to middle age and turns to his wife and says, what is this all for? We're doing work that we don't like to buy things we don't need. And it just so happens that his wife says, yeah, I've been feeling exactly the same. Now, what are we going to do about it? And from there, they realise if they live their own lives and, you know, go for self-sustaining, maybe they can cast off the shackles of modern society and the modern world and the pressures of it all and go their own way, which is, of course, the absolute antithesis of what their next-door neighbours in this beautiful Surbiton street would ever think of doing. And so, you know, there is the judgment, and thus we have the kind of classic, these people want to self-determine and forge their own way, these people want to be part of the society, and both are kind of asking something of the other. Why has this endured? And I think it is because, at the moment, we are more than aware of our differences. I mean, every front page, every newspaper, every time we open our phones, we are aware of how different we are from people. And yet, at The Good Life, deep down underpinning it all is this idea that even though they're different, there's something about how similar they are that means that they're never going to fall out. They actually start from the point of view of, well, we're neighbours, we can't fall out, so how are we going to get on? Whereas I think in 2021, we start a bit more from, right, you're my enemy, so you stay over there.
It's all about being good neighbours, and you play Tom Good.
Yeah.
I remember the show with such fondness, and he was a maverick. But in actual fact, you look at the way we live our lives today, certainly over the last 2 years, and represented, you know, throughout the gardens and in the Great Pavilion, we're all thinking about sustainability, growing veg, taking time, being more outdoors, and in essence, that's what they wanted, wasn't it? They had their farm in their back garden.
Yeah, absolutely. It was how they solved their problem, but really what burns Tom deep down is the idea that there is a way society tells him he has to be, and having been that for 20-odd years and played the game and been a good middle-class boy, it's like, well, why isn't this fulfilling? Why don't I feel like I have done the right thing or this has been worthwhile?
I can see you're relishing the role, but this is your time to take a wander around the grounds, enjoy it, get some inspiration, and perhaps find a few people who've done exactly that.
Yeah.
They lead the Tom Good life.
I've got to get a bit of phosgene in my nostrils.
Oh, sounds good. Rufus, enjoy. We'll catch up with you later.
Thanks, Nikki.
With Chelsea in September this year, we've had a unique opportunity to celebrate the plants of the season. There's one tree in particular that's an absolute favourite of many gardeners, and in autumn it really does come into its own. We sent Mark Lane to find out all there is to know about the beautiful Acer.
Acers, or maples by their common name, are normally deciduous trees grown for their colourful and attractive foliage. They come from the Far East, and in Japan they are known as the autumn welcoming tree. It's the Japanese acers, or Acer palmatum, that we grow most in our gardens, and that's because of the decorative foliage and the bark. Here we've got the weeping forms. They literally just cascade down, and you can create that same effect in your own outdoor space with just a couple of them spaced next to each other. And then behind, we've got the ones reaching for the sky, but still with those magnificent colours. The leaves can either be palmate or dissectum. The palmate is basically because they look like the shape of your hand. And then the dissectum ones, the lobes are cut even further to give you this lovely, lacy, airy effect. And this beautiful one here called ornatum has got purple, yellow, green, and even red within it. Every single colour that you associate with an Acer, all in one plant. This Acer garnet looks absolutely amazing. But if you want stronger, vivid red leaves, then ideally you want to put this in full sun. But just be careful because the sun, as well as drying out of the roots, can scorch the leaves. Acers are happy on most soils except heavy clay, and that's because the roots would just rot in heavy clay. And ideally, you want the soil to be rich and fertile, anywhere between neutral and acidic. But the great thing about Acers is that they require very little pruning and maintenance, so they're brilliant for a beginner as well as a more seasoned gardener. But Acers are just stunning plants. Use them on your patio, balcony or terrace in a feature pot and just look at it and really show it off.
Acers are just so lovely, and do you know what? It's on my wish list to get a big bright orange one. I've got to tick that off. But Acers aren't the only things that can provide a focal point in your garden. Frances Tophill has been searching the showground to find even more plants that will deliver throughout the seasons, the ones that would be perfect for any garden.
When it comes to getting the maximum rewards from your garden, there are some great plants here that will give you all year round interest. And surprisingly, they can take very little effort to keep looking their best. At the front of this bed is a very elegant shrub. It's called Heptacodium mycinoides, or seven sunflower tree. And you can see it is a mass of lovely scented small white flowers. And judging by the amount of bees that are on this, it's incredibly good for wildlife. But the nice thing about these flowers is that they leave behind them a very decorative red calyx, which is always nice to have a little bit more interest. But also, when this loses all of its leaves, it reveals its elegant form and very beautiful bark. Another lovely thing about this is it's also got a practical use because extractions from it have very antibacterial properties. If you want something that's really going to perform for you through every season, then you need an evergreen. And this is a Portuguese laurel, or Prunus lusitanica. Here, it's been kept really low and it's been used to soften all the corners of these raised beds. But it can grow into a huge tree if you let it. And anything in between, any sized hedge, just depends how you prune it. When you do prune it, make sure you don't compost or burn the clippings because as they break down, they release cyanide, so be aware of that. But it's well worth growing. It has lovely pink tips of the stems as it grows in the spring, and then in the summer, huge racemes of white, highly scented flowers are followed by lovely black fruits. So I would definitely recommend giving this some space. This lovely plant is a Cornus cusa, and it's special for so many reasons. It can get pretty tall, but you can prune it back and keep it the size that you want it. Now the leaves, as they emerge in spring, are really attractive, but then again in the autumn, before they drop, they turn a beautiful, vibrant colour. But the real reason that people grow this is for its bracts, not its flowers. The bracts that surround the flowers are really attractive, whites and pinks, and sometimes even both on the same plant. When those flowers finish, they turn into these really unusual fruits. Now, I'm reliably informed that you can, in fact, make a chutney or a jelly, a little bit like a quince jelly with those fruits if you want to as well. So there really is something for everybody. And finally, there is this espalier pear. It takes up hardly any room, really, but offers such a lot. both visually and practically. There's beautiful blossom in the spring. In the summer, you can use this structure as a framework to climb things up. And then of course in the autumn you have these delicious fruits. And then all through the winter you have this beautiful form. It can be used as a screen to divide up the garden or just against a south-facing wall, and you'll have loads and loads of fruit. To keep it looking this good, just prune these shoots down to a few buds, and that's it. So it's always really worthwhile when you're buying any new plant for whatever space you may have, of thinking about the different seasons. It's not just a flower, it's not just a one-hit wonder. Get as much out of every plant as you possibly can.
If you're like me, you love having a garden and really enjoy its benefits, but you don't always have the time to keep it looking tip-top. What we need is some help and expert advice. With the world's gardening glitterati at our fingertips, we sent Chris Bavin out across the showground to take advantage.
If there's one place to get gardening advice, it's here, because for 1 week of the year, this 11-acre site in southwest London is jam-packed full of award-winning garden designers, growers and nurseries. So I'm going to catch up with as many as I can to bring you the best gardening tips from the experts. Billy, I'm on the hunt for secrets, insider knowledge. How are we looking after tree ferns? What's your top tip?
Well, my top tip would be for the winter. As the winter approaches, only to wrap it for the coldest periods, not for all of the winter. What I mean by that is around -5 downwards. And another tip, a little cushion in the head is very handy. Generally when the lighter frosts are coming, they come down on the new croziers which are in the crown and they burn them. But if you just throw the cushion in for the lighter frosts.
Amazing, thank you very much. Kevin, good morning. King of the cacti. I'm on the hunt for tips and tricks. Have you got any secrets about cleaning cacti?
I always use a paintbrush, and it's a really good thing to get rid of cobwebs and dust. Just strike it up the plant.
What about the really spiky ones?
Well, you could always use a hairdryer. That would certainly clear it. Put it on high speed and your troubles will be solved.
That makes perfect sense. And actually, that one in the middle, I think I had exactly that hairstyle when I was younger.
Right.
Matthew, good morning. Could you give me your top salad growing tip or secret, please?
Growing in containers, that's a really good way to grow them. So containers a bit like this, which is not too big, so you can grow a broad range of varieties, and you can move the container around if the light levels change. If it gets a bit cold, you can even bring it inside. Bit of a lip on this, so it helps stop the slugs getting into the container. But again, you can avoid the pests from eating the salad.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Well done, have a good day.
Thank you.
Rob, I'm on the hunt for tips, tricks and hacks.
Yes, with the dahlias, earwigs are our biggest problem at this time of year. So, get a bamboo cane, put the bamboo cane into the pot, get a small flower pot and fill the top of it with cotton wool or some straw, put it on top of the pot and push it in between the blooms of the plants. Next morning, come along, lift it up, put your hand underneath, take the pot out, earwigs will drop out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lots of great gardening tips there from the experts, but how about one from me? So my background is fruit and vegetables. Lots of us like to buy those pots of herbs from the supermarket, but you might find they don't last too long. That's because the plant is too big for the pot it comes in. There's two things you can do about that. You can either pot it on into a bigger pot with some compost, or you can split it out and put it into a similar sized pot. So doing that will not only help these last a lot longer, but you get two plants for the price of one.
Great work, Chris. Some amazing tips there. And when it comes to houseplant hints, then James Wong has all the knowledge. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
What's your top tip for houseplants?
Okay, so I'm going to make a very unsubtle segue here, but I've got to say it's going to be terrariums, right? Because they create this huge humidity, which loads of houseplants like, and it's quite difficult to replicate anywhere else. And they're really low maintenance in terms of watering. So they're that perfect combination.
I love terrariums. I've got a tiny one at home. It's so small, but this just seems like more magical, like a little world.
Yeah, what I love about creating them is not only do I escape into a fantasy world by viewing them, I get to have a hand in creating that. And I'd say the #1 tip on creating a terrarium is to go for a larger vessel.
Okay.
I have made these that have been, you know, tiny, like a little tiny vase. However, the bigger they are, the more stable the environment is inside and the easier they are to grow.
Well, show us how to make one.
Okay. So what I do is I'll take a fishbowl rather than any one of those geodesic type shapes, and I'm going to fill it with this. This is called Akadama soil, and it's sold by bonsai manufacturers, and it's so much better at growing terrariums than any sort of compost you can use. And it does that because it holds very little moisture. Terrariums are all about creating loads of air moisture and very little root moisture. If you've had a terrarium that's gone moldy or rotted, it's because you've used compost instead of this stuff. So I basically poured a whole bunch in, I've smoothed it back out.
And it's easy to sort of manipulate in the bowl?
Absolutely, with the back of a spoon you can create any shape you want. I like to do this kind of slanted arrangement. And then I've covered the surface of that in this stuff. It's called bun moss, a scientific name because I like to get a bit of Latin in, Lycobreum glaucum. And you can buy it at any florist shop, usually on order, but it's not expensive. And really, I've tried every single moss variety there is to grow. This is the only one that's really sustainable in a terrarium.
To get the best stuff so it lasts.
Absolutely. So I've packed that in, and then all you have to do is put some plants in. So I'll give you an example of this. This is a lovely little Phytonia, and here's a tip. I'm going to snip these bits out.
You just snip them out?
Yeah. You could plant this, however, to be more precise about your arrangement, and I think to make it look a bit more natural, you can do this. And it's kind of halfway between floristry and horticulture. In the high humidity in here, these will root into place. And it just allows you to position them in a more precise way. You can do it old school, so we've got an Ophiopogon here. I'm gonna take this guy out of his pot. To make plants look really naturalistic in a terrarium, I find you take them out, in here there's a whole bunch of smaller plants. It looks so much more realistic if you have clumps of odd numbers of small plants rather than just one large one.
I see.
So I'd almost take all the soil off there.
Take all the soil off.
And you can just shove them.
And almost like dig it in with your hand.
I'm doing this very quickly, but basically you nestle them in between the moss. And it's the moss that they root into. And so if you have smaller examples next to the bigger ones, it looks like a natural rainforest clump that really popped up rather than just whacking 3 big monsters in there.
So then you've got some bigger ones there as well.
And in terms of care after that, the biggest thing is to make sure that they're not overwatered. So I always water them with a mister. Again, it's all about air humidity, not root humidity. Spray that in there.
Spray that.
And I might seal the top of this. In fact, I almost always do. And I'd put something like you can even use a sheet of cling film that's trimmed around the edge. You won't notice the difference. Or like a glass plate or a glass saucer. And that's all you need to do. I mist them maybe about once a month. If there's any dead leaves, I remove them with the tweezers. That's all you've got to do.
And then there's some little wooden feature in this one, so you can just...
Yeah, so got little pieces of wood, which you can get at aquarium supply shops. You can also get beautiful pieces of rocks that just have so much more detail and just create your own fantasy world.
Thank you so much, James. I'm going to do one of my own at home. Fantastic. Now, earlier in the show, we caught up with gardening newbie Rufus Hound. He's been off on a mission to meet Chelsea's Grow Your Own gurus to discover if fruit and veg really is the key to living the good life.
If I'm going to play Tom Good, I need some expertise. I need to talk to the people who know their stuff, who are here at the Chelsea Flower Show. Flowers, Chelsea Flower Show. So I'm here to find out about vegetables. Check out the onions on that. Matthew, I've got to say I am loving this lettuce display, and that is not a phrase I ever imagined myself saying.
No, especially at Chelsea as well. Yeah,
quite. So what is the trick to growing truly great lettuce?
I think the real trick when you're doing it as baby leaf is not to sow it too thickly. You don't get the problems with damping off and things like that when you sow it thinly. And even when it goes past its best sometimes, we've got chickens on the nursery, so...
Perfect tip, thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers. At 42, I can look at that bit of chard and think, that is a sexy bit of chard. Now, Chris, I have it in my head that tomatoes are the easiest thing to grow because anyone can grow tomatoes, but you have clearly turned it into an art form.
We've tried, but they're not always the easiest thing to grow.
Right.
So the big danger with tomatoes inside is red spider, and the leaves start to go mottled and yellow. But we use a little tiny wasp, microscopic wasp, which eats those larvae and keeps the insects off them.
Do you know, a little while ago, I was talking to Chris Packham and asked him what good are wasps, and he failed to convince me, but you have succeeded where that man failed.
They all have their place in nature.
Well, there might be a moral in that story somewhere, mightn't there? I've been trying to find people who can give me some tips on growing vegetables. You are clearly the man to ask.
Well, the first tip for you is don't start, don't bother, because this will give you a big, big headache if you try and copy this.
What's the easiest thing to grow?
If anything, I suppose the radish takes 5 weeks from sowing. This is probably my last Chelsea, because I'm getting old now. I'm getting 80.
I'll bet you a tenner.
What do you want?
Anybody who grows like this, who goes, no, I'm too old for it now. You have 6 weeks sat down, you go, could do one more, could do one more.
You'll have to do a bit of travelling to get your tenner back.
Well, it's a flying visit, but all of the expertise has been very welcome. And I leave here knowing that anybody can grow stuff. It's just about finding the right plant for you. So a little bit of intelligence, a little bit of application, and great treasures can come your way. I know I've met my perfect plant. Wish me luck.
Every day this week, we're getting exclusive access behind the scenes in our secret Chelsea. And last night, I got the showground almost to myself with a very special look around as the sun was going down. Coming down, doesn't it? Can you hear the trickle of the water? Gives you a sense of peace and tranquility. I love these glass structures just glistening in the light. And if you come across here from the avenue, you've got a beautiful border. But again, the care and attention, the way it has been lit and the use of colour. We've got russets, we've got oranges, we've got yellows and we've got whites, really bringing the foliage alive. We've got purples in the distance. But if you look at this sweeping wooden staircase going up to this huge, magnificent tree, just take a look up in the branches. They look like fairy hats to me. At first, I thought these were alliums. You always find alliums at Chelsea, but then I realised it's actually a dandelion with a magical twist. Let's not forget, our gardens and outside spaces aren't just to be enjoyed during the day, but also at night as well. See what I mean?
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. What a great opportunity to see Chelsea like that.
Do you know what? It was fantastic just to walk around the showground on your own. It was truly magical, and to see them going in and having a dip at the end of it.
Shall we all do it?
Have you brought your cozzies?
Tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow, always.
It was a bit cold. Now, it is that time again when we open up our Chelsea clinic and give you the chance to ask our experts any gardening questions you like. Today, I'm thrilled to say we're joined by Toby Buckland, of course, the one and only. Are you ready?
Yes.
Come on then.
I think we should start with a question from our audience.
Yes.
We have Justine waiting in the wings. Hello.
Hello.
Do you want to ask Toby?
Yes, what will be the colour trend for next summer season?
Oh, well, Nikki,
Excellent.
I talk of little else. Orange. Orange is
Obsessed.
the colour.
Excellent.
Yeah, and
My
it's partly
favourite.
because at the minute it's purple, but orange you can sort of move in with the purple because it pops against it. So it's not ditching the old completely and having a quick, 90-degree turn. You can sort of slip it in. So it's orange. My money's on
Wonderful.
that anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
Hope you've all taken a note of that. Liana Norris on social media says, what is the best way to get rid of established stinging nettles? They're taking over, she says, though she pulls them up by the roots.
Yeah, you've got to keep pulling them up. And actually, a few hours after rain is a good time because they've got really bright yellow roots and they come out almost like a mop, like a mop of them. And if you keep doing it 2 or 3 times, obviously with the gauntlets on, you'll prevail, you'll conquer them.
So, Liana, get down and dirty. That's the advice.
Let's go to Nathan. Hello.
Hello.
Let's ask Toby your question.
So my question is, if I don't have much space, how can I keep my pots flowering for longer without having to replant them all of the time?
Wow, have you heard of lasagna planting with bulbs?
It's ringing a bell.
No.
It's a really good way of doing it. See this here? This is a pot of compost. In the bottom, first in, are some tulips, and then some daffodils on the top, and then some crocus. Now, the crocus being nearer the top and earlier flowering, come out winter time, followed by the daffodils in April, and then tulips in May.
Clever. I love that. So you've always got flowers in the pot.
Yeah.
We could do that, couldn't we?
We could do that.
That's
You could.
brilliant.
But I think some people might be nervous because you'd think, oh, they'd grow on top of each other, but because they're coming at different times of year, it's perfect.
They fight their way through the stones in the ground, don't they? They'll be fine.
No, excellent.
Ella from Bristol's got in touch. She says, where's the best spot in the garden for a new rose bush in the colder months? And do they need watering in winter?
No, stick them in the ground. Thing is, full sun, you don't need to water them. They're tough as old boots, roses. They'll come through anything. But full sun, when it comes to roses, is a defined amount of sunlight hours, and it's 6 hours a day. Could be 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, but if you can get 6 hours a day onto a rose, that's full sun.
And no need to water?
Not in winter. If you're planting now, yeah, it's on you. And if you're planting in spring, it's on you for the whole growing season. But get them in the autumn, you'll be fine.
Lovely, thank
Lovely.
you.
Gillian Kirkpatrick says she bought a hibiscus, her first, as a young plant early this year. It's in a pot, no flowers so far, and leaves constantly turning yellow. Any advice, please?
Yeah, hibiscus. They do this when they get dry and they can't get enough food out from their compost or soil. So, Gillian, you just got to water a bit more and maybe pot it up into a larger container with some better compost.
And very quickly to finish, Amanda says, any suggestions for winter pots with a splash of colour outside, winter pansies or anything like that she should be using?
Yeah, well, winter pansies, they always need to be in company, and I think put them with heucheras, put them with some winter flowering sedges or winter leaf sedges, if you like, evergreens, and it just, the whole thing creates a lovely tapestry that's easy on the eye. Never just have winter bedding, it just never really lasts.
We always want a bit of colour in the winter, don't we?
Love colour.
Always want colour.
But what's good is that there are amazing plants that you can plant that will stay alive.
Yeah, and they'll be there for in summer as well.
Thank you,
Perfect.
Toby, as ever, brilliant answers. Now, tomorrow we have a very special guest for our final Chelsea clinic. Carol Klein will be here. So, if you have a question, do get in touch using the hashtag BBC Chelsea on Twitter or on the Gardeners World Facebook page, and we'll help as much as we can.
We will. Well, that's all we've got time for today. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow when we'll be revealing how to love your garden in the coming winter season.
Oh yes, and Monty and Joe are here at 7 p.m. tonight on BBC Two with a look at how we can all do our bit to help the planet by being savvy with our gardening. Until then, bye-bye.
Good night.